Thank you. Can you hear me? Well, thank you for that introduction. Wow, this used to be my worst nightmare. That might resonate with some of you. I showed up to Toastmasters in August of 2021, and I said, well, I have to give a speech in April, and I'm terrified. There's going to be a stage, and about 100 people, and a microphone. And I was terrified. I spent most of my life avoiding the microphone. And Dick Jensen looked at me and he said, it's nice to meet you, Hannah. This $104 that you're going to spend to sign up as a member is going to be the best investment you've ever made in yourself. And here I am at my first Toastmasters conference in person, and it's been such a pleasure already. And one of the things I'm most excited about, kind of nerding out here, is I've always struggled with a good title for this presentation. Because while I think the ladder of accountability it's one of my favorite tools, it's not a very sexy title when you put it on something and trying to describe it. So I'd like it if you all would take your pens and just cross off the title Ladder of Accountability, because thanks to Sandra, we have a new title. And I'm sure you'll all tell me what you think about it in the evaluation. This presentation is now titled, You Are Your Own Rescue. Because in every story that we heard this morning from Sandra and from you in the audience, you had to imagine an imaginary lifeboat. And Stuart's ladder of accountability is the ladder that you have to drag yourself up to get victoriously to the top and swing your legs over the top of that lifeboat and stand inside of it. So that's what we're doing today, and that's why I'm so stoked to have this opportunity. So I've got about 15 to 18 minutes, and I just have two goals. The first goal is to introduce you to the ladder so that you walk out of here with a basic understanding of what it is. And when I think of basic understanding, that simply means if you wake up tomorrow morning, I want you to be able to use this. If you're facing a challenge, I want you to actually be able to use the tool. So that's the level of understanding we're going for. My second goal, I would like to share some of my insights about accountability and some of the cultural context that I think we're facing around just the word, the way that the connotation that the word accountability has. And as one of, I think, a few millennials in the room, I'm a geriatric millennial and proud of it, but I think I have some insight, and I've found that in my career as a geriatric millennial, I have the opportunity to bridge the gap a little bit between generations. And I think one of you said this morning that words matter. So I want us to break down the word accountability a little bit, and I hope I have some wisdom to share with you, because I think words do matter. And if I said millennial and your first thought was, oh yeah, those millennials, but they're the ones that you're coaching and that you're mentoring and that are coming to your clubs and might not be coming back. I think I have some insights to share as we go through this ladder. So let's dive in. First things first. Maybe first things first. Could you advance the slide? Uh-oh. Well, imagine that there's a ladder on stage with me while we wait for it to appear, because at the bottom of every ladder is simply the ground. If we picture a ladder, then before you even get on the ladder, if you have a problem, the ground is where you're unaware of the problem, potentially blissfully unaware. I have handouts for each of you. Oh, you have to turn it on. Dick Jensen. Ladies and gentlemen, can we get a round of applause for Mr. Dick Jensen? Here is my ladder. And there we are on the ground, unaware, unconscious. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, isn't it? Before you know, you have a problem. But then suddenly something happens and we realize we have a problem. As club president, it might be Vicky Luba showing up and saying, how many of your members are using Pathways? Everyone should be using Pathways. And I don't know about you, but I want to blame everybody except us. Well, gosh, it's because the Toastmasters website makes it so hard to use, or my club members just don't like it. I want to come up with excuses. So the first rung of this ladder is really where we just want to blame. We want to blame others, which is normal, right? When we have a problem, the first human response is, can I throw someone else under the bus? right? It is not comfortable here. But eventually, as leaders, and I heard a lot of stories, you all moved up this ladder pretty quickly in the stories. Personal excuses. Well, it's not really Toastmasters website's fault, but I have personal excuses. I don't have time to figure that out and help my club. I'm a mom, I work full time, and I got voluntold sort of into being this club president. I got all sorts of excuses. And man, I don't know about you guys, but I'm really good at making personal excuses. I'm really good at making them sound very convincing. So they don't even sound like excuses anymore. But into my life raft, have to climb. And I think it was actually Vicky Luba, you again. You stood up here today and you said, that first step is nasty. And I wrote it down because I thought I'm using that later. Because these first steps are nasty. And if you think about that life raft vision, it is nasty. It takes so much upper body strength to pull yourself up out of drowning into the side of a lifeboat. So we go to I can't, which is basically more excuses. It's a little bit less like excuses and just kind of like, well, I guess there's a problem, but I just can't, right? I just can't do it. I can't get them to use pathways. I'm still right here on that particular challenge. Being totally honest. Maybe I'm in wait and hope. Wait and hope is basically, well, like, okay, I accept there's a problem. I am not going to make personal excuses anymore, but maybe my problem will just go away, right? How many of you have found that hope is an effective strategy? Yeah, not a lot of hands out there, okay? So here's where we really start to get above the water. Like we can start breathing, the waves are not like splashing into our face. We start to acknowledge reality. You know what? I do have a problem. And maybe something needs to change. And by golly, maybe that something is me. Ooh, maybe that's the nastiest, most painful step. Yikes. But if we can get there, then we can move up to embrace it. Okay, I'm what needs to change. Okay, I can own that. When we get up to embrace it, we start to own it. How many of you have found that if you own the problem, you're willing to fight for a solution? Right? And we think about buy-in, we think about wanting people to help us solve the problems we have in our workplace, in our club. They have to own it as their own problem. Because as humans, we just don't want to invest in a solution until we truly own it. So getting up to this embrace it stage is crucial. And then we move up to where we want to find solutions, right? I'm hoping to get there someday, and we're going to get Gavaliers on board with pathways. Dick Jensen is smiling right now because I said that out loud on stage in a microphone. And then we make it happen, right? Victory. I am in my life raft. I heard story after story this morning. That was so cool, Sandra, that you did that, because that's what leadership is about, right? As leaders, we have to climb this ladder. We have to be accountable. What do you notice about, like if I put a line right here, what do you notice about the things on the bottom versus the things on the top? Shout it out. Yeah, negative, passive versus active. You guys are such geniuses. It's almost like Toastmasters is where leaders are made. Right? On the bottom, things are happening to us. Victim. I'm a victim. Up above, things happen because of us. That's leadership. Leadership, the realm of leaders is the future. It's change. And so we have to be accountable. And we need upcoming leaders to be accountable. But if we think about that word accountable, accountability, words matter. Help me out here. When you hear that word accountability, shout out, what do you think of? Who do you think of? Maybe like what visceral responses come to mind for you? Your dad, yeah. What else? Success. If you're accountable, you achieve success. Tracking in Weight Watchers. Okay, I should try that out. What else? Yes, vulnerability. My gosh, it's super vulnerable to cross that line, isn't it? Getting above that line is so vulnerable. It's a lot easier to stay down below and be a victim. I asked that very same question a couple years ago in a training. And my my career has mostly been in the Apple industry, and most of my colleagues are Spanish speaking. And so I always had a translator. So I asked this question to a group of about 20 crew leaders, and I said, what comes to mind when I say accountability? Because I was jazzed. I was like, man, we're doing this 2-day training on accountability, because I get excited about accountability. And I'm super glad I asked, because this group of gentlemen, first of all, they went silent, and the translator translated, and that was the day that I found out that accountability in Spanish is said rendición de cuentas, and I can't even say it without getting this aggressive voice. So we asked them what comes to mind when we say rendición de cuentas, and they were silent. And I was new at doing trainings, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do if they didn't answer. And finally, this older gentleman stands up, and he looks me right in the eye, and he says, in English to me, he says, Hannah, it's the end of my grandmother's finger. And I mean, in his eyes, I could see, like, wow, he just reverted to this very small child, and I'm terrified of his grandma, and I can't even see her. And I'm so glad we did that, because here I was marching in to say, accountability is a good thing. Let's hold each other accountable. And you know what they were hearing? Let's walk around and gotcha to everybody we see, right? Like, that's what they thought I was presenting. So we had to deconstruct this word accountability. And rendición de cuentas, accountability, to be able to take account for your actions, right? Just like you would take, if you were managing your checkbook by hand in a ledger, right, Sandra? You know where every dollar has been. Can we do the same with our behaviors? And can we create a culture where accountability isn't hostile, right? It's really fun to be on this end of the pointing finger. But it is not fun to be on the end that you all are on right now, right? But I think culturally we've created a real hostility around accountability. And we've popularized victimhood. Because when you are blaming others, under the guise of saying, I'm holding them accountable, pointing the finger, it feels like you have a lot of power. But if we look at this ladder, power and agency is at the top. It's not at the bottom. So what do I think we should do about that? Well, I told you a story about when I first came to Toastmasters. I walked in, I was terrified, and Dick Jensen told me it would be the best $104 I would ever spend. But he also promised me that he could help my butterflies fly in formation. How are they doing? I don't know what they're doing up here right now. But he normalized for me, he and the whole club normalized for me what it feels like, that it's okay, that we show up and we're nervous to public speak. And every time we have a guest, they come in and they say, I'm terrified of public speaking. And we say, great, you're in the right place, right? But how often does someone come in and say, man, they list off all the people they're blaming. How often do we say, you're in the right place? You sound like a leader, right? We don't. We're quick to judge victimhood. And my fear with that is that anybody younger than me was probably promised a trophy, right? And we show up places, or we hear what people grumble about. I hear it all the time. Oh, those millennials. And, and I've got some teenagers at home, and let me tell you, we have a ladder of accountability hanging on our wall, and I spend a lot of days saying, oh, that's interesting. Where do you think you are right here, right? And then I get the eye roll, and then they stomp away. But usually they will come back to that when they think I'm not looking and make a change. But we have to normalize being at the bottom of this ladder, that's where we start. Every story that I heard today, every story started with that temptation to blame others, to want to just put our head back under the sand, pretend there's not a problem. I think we're sitting in a room of leaders who are incredibly accountable, and we push ourselves to the top of that ladder. We have to normalize and talk about and invite people to climb the ladder with us. We cannot just blame young people because nobody ever showed them that there were steps above where they are. That's what I think is crucial. when we think about the ladder of accountability. Most crucially is to use it for ourselves. And I actually brought mine. I didn't want you to judge me for having such crinkled papers up here for giving a speech, but I thought it was important. I pulled this off of my cork board and brought it because this is the ladder with all my messy notes on it from all the times I pull it out and have to ask myself, where am I on this ladder? I really don't like that I'm at the bottom, but today I'm going to stay at the bottom and I'll try to get up higher tomorrow, right? Sometimes we have to coach ourselves through that. This is a tool that you can use. And if we use it with ourselves and we are honest about where we are, which is vulnerable, as I think it was David said, it's incredibly vulnerable. But I think young leaders, young people coming to your clubs, Toastmasters, where leaders are made, we need you to be vulnerable with us. We need you to tell us not only that you're making our public speaking butterflies fly in formation, but we need you to tell us that it's okay to be at the bottom, and we need you to show us what the top looks like. Normalize it. That's what we need. So that is my challenge to you. My friend Marty is going to hand out a beautiful ladder of accountability to each of you, and I hope that you will take it home with you. And the next time you face a challenge, please look at it and just ask yourself, am I above the line or am I below the line? And the next time that you find someone that you're coaching or mentoring and you know that they're below the line, bring it out. Let them discover for themselves that they're below the line so that you've normalized it rather than brought judgment to them. Thank you so much for your time.